Ada Comstock, born December 11, 1876, was the first of three Comstock children. From an early age, she was something of a tomboy, preferring to play with the boys and taking adventurous journeys out to the river. This was to the dismay of her mother, who worried about her safety and proper upbringing. Sarah educated Ada from the ages of 5 to 8, and the girl learned to read and write at an early age. She used these skills to keep a steady correspondence with her father while he was away, and by reading aloud to the family. These reading sessions were supplied by Solomon's extensive library and collecting habit. Ada and Solomon were very close during her childhood, and it was a relationship that would last a lifetime, coloring many of Ada's personal and professional decisions.
Ada definitely had a strong relationship with Solomon. They consulted a lot back and forth, both professionally and personally. Ada seemed to always kind of go back to her father and kind of question and ask and feel out what the best route to go with a lot of her life decisions. So.
At age 8, Ada began public school. From her composition books, it is clear that Ada was a child who observed and understood the world around her. These books are full of notes, doodles, and even a short story about the hardships of going to school during the winter in the harsh Midwest. She was co-educated for one semester at Bishop Whipple School as well as Mount Vernon Private School, while Solomon served in the 51st Congress. However, she returned to public education to graduate from Moorhead Public High School in 1891. Ada was only 15 at the time. At that age, Ada was too young for most women's colleges.
So she had to go to the University of Minnesota, apparently, which she actually excelled there. She was an English major and completed that degree with very high regard and did well in that. She stayed actually at the University of Minnesota for a number of years, but she did end up going back to Smith College and finishing off her degree there.
Still just 17, Ada struggled to form new relationships and adapt to the new grading system at Smith. However, she persevered to meet the high standards in academics she set for herself at the University of Minnesota and found new friends through extracurricular activities such as a theater production of The Merchant of Venice. In 1897, she graduated, but Ada was not finished with her education. Once more, under Solomon's recommendation, Ada entered the Moorhead Normal School in 1897. Her father wished for her to get her teaching credentials, which would be of use during the economic downfall. Though Ada didn't much like her teaching courses, she graduated with a master's in English history and education from Columbia in 1898. In 1900, Ada accepted a position teaching rhetoric at the University of Minnesota. Her teaching style was largely influenced by what she observed in her years as a student. Having often wished she had more enthusiastic teachers, she realized that teachers make more of an impact than the education system itself. This impression of education lasted her entire career, both as a teacher and as an administrator. In 1907, she accepted the position as First Dean of Women. At this time, the needs of female students were not being met as well as the males. Ada immediately set to work, planning a female dormitory and creating a women's center to replace the one that had burned down 3 years before. When Ada was appointed her position, most women lived scattered around campus in boarding houses that housed both men and women. In 1909, Sanford Hall was opened, offering separate housing for women. After consulting her father once more, Ada took on the role of first full-time dean of Smith College in 1912. Here, too, she raised money for a women's dorm with a common area for female students to socialize outside of the small, closed-off circles that they normally created.
She was trying to change a lot of the culture around the girls themselves, in that a lot of women, when put in groups, become really cliquey, and she didn't like that. So she was actually working on a plan to recreate some of the dormitories So they would have a huge meeting and common area, but then smaller individual kind of rooms. So it wouldn't be as easy for the girls to kind of separate themselves, really. She professionally went on to Radcliffe College, where she was the first full-time president, so that was pretty extraordinary of her as well.
In 1923, Ada was offered the prestigious position as president of Radcliffe College. After much deliberation, she accepted. At Radcliffe, she encouraged women with PhDs to tutor students, even pushing them to continue such positions through pregnancies. This was a unique experience for many, as women were not encouraged to pursue both career and family planning.
She also worked, of course, at Radcliffe, worked really hard to get the girls educated the same as the Harvard boys. So she made it mandatory in the Harvard contracts, the teachers' contracts, that they had to teach to the girls. So that was really foundational and really, really impressive at the time, actually, that she did have that belief in education. And then it didn't matter who you were, you still should be educated in that same level.
One of Ada's biggest concerns as Radcliffe's president was solidifying the relationship between the school and Harvard University. Harvard was reluctant to formally merge schools, but in 1931, Ada sealed a deal that would keep Harvard certifying Radcliffe degrees. It was not a permanent arrangement, but it helped to solidify things in 1943, when Harvard agreed to provide educators to Radcliffe. The women's school provided funding from their tuition to Harvard. Ada was never satisfied with this and retired from her position in 1946. Aside from Ada's formal professional career, the eldest Comstock daughter kept her life filled with leadership and service. She was appointed first president of the American Association of University Women, was the only woman in Herbert Hoover's Law Enforcement Commission, and was an integral part of the Institute of Pacific Relations.
She was the only woman on what's called the Wickersham Commission, which was actually a program that was created by the White House trying to figure out why prohibition didn't work. And she was the only woman on that commission.
Later in life, Ada surprised both her friends and family by marrying long-term friend Wallace Notstein in 1946, shortly after her retirement.
I think it's still important to remember that those roots that Ada had came from this area. They came from Moorhead. I have heard rumor at when they originally got the Comstock House, they wanted to call it the Ada Comstock House because of her very influential nature. She was a little bit more famous at that point in time as opposed to her father, decades later.
Ada died on December 12, 1973.